Accounting is a language. It is the language of wealth. It is the language of money. It is the language of business.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frimming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello and welcome to Rise and Stride, a Cal CPA podcast where we dive into leading topics by bringing together diverse voices to empower you to take your next step. I'm your host, Denise LeDuc-Frimming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs. Today, I'm thrilled to be here with Guylaine St. Juste, President and CEO of the National Association of Black Accountants. With a career that spans nearly 30 years in the financial services sector, Guylaine has held senior and executive roles at SunTrust Bank and Capital One, and has served on several boards in the Washington, D.C. area. Thank you for joining us today, Guylaine. I know you are extremely busy, and so I greatly appreciate you sharing today your thoughts and perspectives with us.
It takes one to know one, Denise, is that you are extremely busy as well. And I welcome this space with you in gratitude. I know both you and I are practitioners of gratitude.
Yes.
It's not something we say, it is something we practice. And so let me just thank you for all that you're doing for your state, for your community, for all leaders that you touch every day. It has been nothing but pure joy to get to know you better and partner with you. And we're just getting started. So thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation together.
Thank you. And we are just getting started. So today we'll kick off one conversation, and then we plan to have other ones face-to-face in person in the next month or so. So I'm just looking forward to that and being together. So today we have a couple questions and thought we'd just dive right in to the first one is just to tell us a little bit about the National Association of Black Accountants, for those that don't know, its mission, and then also what is top of mind for all of you in the next year?
Great question. So the reality of it, Denise, is we're retiring the name National Association of Black Accountants. And as of May 16th, we are rebranding and relaunching as NABA Inc. NABA in Hebrew means good news. In Urdu, it means to prophesy. And so that exhibits NABA's desire to be a leader with our new focus, which is to empower Black business leaders at every point of the journey. The reason we went into that direction is really because and you and I have had all these conversations about the state of the pipeline for diverse folks, particularly, and you know I am unapologetic about speaking on behalf of Black and Brown people because that's my constituency. We've looked at the data, you and I, we've had conversation that we need to really increase representations of Black and Brown people in accounting. And what we realized in the process is that in reality, accounting is a language. It is the language of wealth. It is the language of money. It is the language of business. And I've been curious, and you and I have been allies in this work, to wonder if it's because in Black and Brown community, people think still that accounting is tax and audit, not that there's anything wrong with tax and audit, but don't understand the varied and such amazing careers that exist in the field, even in the name of entrepreneurship and, you know, the multiple ways in which an accounting degree could show up. And so when we leaned into this, we really thought beyond equity as it stands, but to think about that our vision is to path and pave a more just world by unleashing endless opportunities so that Black business leaders can be the very best version of themselves at every point of the journey. And then we then focused on our mission, and we said that in order to achieve that, we have to engage. I love how Brian Stevenson talks about you can't understand a problem from a distance. We got to engage, we got to educate, we got to empower, we got to enhance, and we got to elevate. But here's where we really think we're focused on is our Black business leaders and institutions. because we can't do it alone, right? We got to do this together. And that's why I'm so grateful. And we're also grateful for the work that I know we'll be doing with Cal CPA, because I think that that's how we move the conversation in an intentional way, so that 5 years from now, when we're looking at the data, we can say, together, we've made progress.
I love that together, because it does take all of us to move the boulder, in essence, up the hill, because we do have a lot to do, all of us. And it's true that a lot of business leaders and students, for sure, they don't understand the multiple pathways that are available. If you're an accountant, if you're a CPA, they think of tax and audit. That's always first top of mind. And I know Bill Paroli of AICPA, he was the chair, said it's a 10-lane highway. Maybe in California, it's a 12-lane highway. I don't know, but there's a lot of.
It is a limitless lane highway, right? It's the Autobahn.
Yeah,
right?
I love that.
It's the Autobahn, right? Because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you choose to, once you've obtained this accounting degree, the CPA, the CGMA, anything else, right? At the end of the day, you can go do whatever you want, because you now understand the language of wealth, the language of money, and the language of business, right? And I think it is behooving on all of us to get the message out. And we've got to create the institutions, either create, build, refine, whatever words we want to use there, because I know words matter.
Right.
That people feel like they can, in fact, at NABA, we talked about feel relevant, feel like they belong, and feel that it is done in a way that is sustainable.
Because I love when you say the wealth, the money, and the
business.
Yeah, because that's really at the heart of everything.
It's at the heart of everything. If you don't understand asset minus liability equals owner's equity, we're going to continue to confuse, people's wealth with like the asset that they own. And we don't know good things happens from that. We're going to continue to have businesses where people don't understand the difference between revenue and profit. We're going to have, a continuum of businesses that don't understand the power of cash flow management. Right. I mean, as we're two women having this conversation, I've said to multiple guys, I said, cash got promoted from king to queen, you see.
It's true. I always would say the cash is king for sure. And content is right behind it now these days, because that's.
Yeah, but cash is now queen. It's no longer king. It's
I like
promoted to queen.
I like it. I have a lot of Guylaine sayings now that I can use going forward. So
they're called the Guyism.
I like it. It's great. So, and thank you for the spoiler alert. Tell us the new name. So we're glad that
it's
you
NABA,
heard it all, everyone.
Yeah, it's just we've kept the same of the letter.
Right.
But if you go into our website, you will start to see a completely new design, a new feel, and you will see that it says NABA Inc., empowering Black business leaders at every point of the journey.
That's exciting. Very exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Well, I wanted you to be one of the first to know. I mean, that otherwise, why is allyship? Why does it matter, right?
I appreciate that. I do, in our first podcast. So thank you for that.
There you go.
So you joined NABA in February of 2021. Surely in the midst of uncertainty, the pandemic in a state where we didn't know where we were going. So what led you to this role, especially at that time?
Denise, I will tell you that everything in my life happened by serendipity. Everything.
I understand that.
Yeah, I knew you would. You wouldn't be a practitioner of gratitude if you didn't get that, right? At the right, there's a Buddhist principle that says when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think that when we are ready, the opportunity appears. And so that's what happened. I think I had been wanting to be a CEO. I've always knew I wanted to be a CEO. Part of that was why I left the financial services sector, because with a name like Guylaine Juste and all that I stand for and don't stand for, I knew that was really, really hard to get there in that space. And I knew I wanted to do work that matters, right? I wanted to do work that matters, just like you. You do work that matters. You're not in this for the money. You're in this because you want to have meaning and significance. And it was the same thing for me. And I think that through COVID, as we all got grounded, I had more time to focus on, what do I really want? What is important to me? And, and had time to reach out to several of my friends who were in the search business. And that's how NABA found me. Quite frankly, I wasn't even, thinking about applying. And one of my friends in the search business called and said, I think you'd be perfect for this organization and you should look at it. And it took some convincing.
Well, glad you said yes.
Thank you for that.
Great.
And I've been thrilled to be here. And for me, the richest point of it has been, again, the assumptions that we make. And I can talk about it myself as somebody who's not an accountant, who's an outsider looking in, about what I was going to get. And then I've gotten to work with incredible people such as yourself in ways that I never thought would happen. And so I'm really, really deeply grateful for you as a woman, for you as a leader, for you as an executive, and the way in which you lead.
Thank you for that. I feel the same about you. So it's a great relationship. You mentioned you left the financial services sector. What was your experience, as a Black woman within that sector? And what did you learn? And maybe you can share how others can navigate some of those challenges.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I think I tell everyone, financial services, like professional services, does not just give you sustainability, it really brings you into prosperity. But you got to be willing to push through it because it is hard, right? It is really, really hard. I have had experience such as people saying to me, I can't even believe you got in the room because I don't have an MBA, to all of the story that you hear, not being invited, just being the other one, the idea of being othered, and so on. And I think part of it too is the time was different, but even then I challenged it, right? And I always tell folks, I love when Vanessa Williams says, there's no greater revenge than to be successful.
Absolutely.
Right. And so the idea is there's never been greater revenge than to outperform your peers, which we continue to do. And we got to understand too, right, that this, when I was in financial services, it's not the same up today. Today, we're more open about having a different conversation than before. And so
absolutely,
I think for me, the hardest part of it was the covering. Right? What Harvard Business School talks about, the idea of, we cover so many layers of our identities, right? And so when I was in financial services, I am such a fan of community college. I so believe in the role that community colleges play and should play in this country. I am a product of community college. And yet when I was in financial services, I covered that whole piece of myself because it would just not, without an MBA, without a CPA, having gone to a regional school for my undergrad, I knew that I didn't need another thing to be othered around. And so I never talked about my community college and, the experience of it and all that, the opportunities that it afforded me to have a higher education, right? And so it has been liberating, and I will always carry with me this deep gratitude that the freedom to do this work is because I've achieved a level of prosperity by working in that field. And now I can do whatever I want.
It's interesting when you said that you can't bring your whole self. And I've heard that from a number of women leaders within the financial services. I heard one woman say she had to dress a certain way. Mm-hmm. They brought her brought her into a store, they suited her up, and this is how she had to look. She couldn't even dress the way she wanted. So unfortunate that you could not bring your whole self to work. And I think that's something that has changed. At least that's what I'm hearing, is you can bring that whole self and you can share who you are and be proud of who you are.
A little bit.
Maybe not.
A little
Maybe
bit.
it's getting there. We're moving there.
So yes, I like that. I think we're moving towards, and I think that, you know what, Denise, I am a pragmatic, right? I'm a pragmatic. And at the end of the day, here's what I tell young professionals entering the space. The market is boss, right? You know, that's something that Rich Fairbank, the CEO of Capital One, where I worked for 6 years, said often. The market is boss.
I like
right?
that.
And at the end of the day, there's a level of ourselves that, you know, we're going to bring until it renders us unsuccessful, right? At the end of the day, to this day, even as a CEO, and I know you can relate to this, I dress intentionally for the audience that I'm going to meet, right? If I'm going to go to, you know, an office that has a culture of a code of formality, I certainly cannot show up with my orange dress, right?
Right.
I
You're
can't.
absolutely right.
I mean, you know, and that's the conversation I want us to have, is that, you know what, is we both have to be able to lean into this from a pragmatic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly can wear my purple dress or my orange dress, but then if, you know what, I don't close the business, that's, you know, I've got to recognize that too. And you know what, and I have this conversation with my daughters who are 30 and 25. And they're like, well, but it shouldn't matter. I'm like, the key operative is should, but it does.
You're absolutely right. I like that the market is boss, that get in that pragmatic element, because that provides that lens that can help you navigate through some of that.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, in the seat that you sit, Denise, you'll make choices every day too.
Absolutely.
Right there, it's all authentically you. I've never experienced you that I would walk away saying, who was she today? It's not the point. But I have experienced the different prism of you. I've experienced you in a large group where you are the CEO that's got to make everybody feel welcome and engaged. I've experienced you in a place of deep allyship where we're talking about something. I've experienced you as an advocate that has very clear sense of the problems and how we should like to solve them. Mm-hmm. That still makes you you, but in each one of those spaces, there's a prism of you that shows up to be able to move the agenda forward. And I respect that very, very much.
I like the pragmatic piece that you said. I think that resonates probably with all our listeners, and just how you have to look at things. Because sometimes you think the market should be different, but it should be. And that's exactly what you said. It should be, but it isn't.
Should.
Should is the operative word.
Should being the operative word. And what I want to name too is, I don't want anybody listening or who will listen, or as we continue to have those conversations, to confuse what I say, right? Mm-hmm. When in Rome, act like the Romans. It is true. If I were to go do business in Saudi Arabia, I certainly would not show up with shorts. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Because there's a culture. And at the same time, I mean, like, this is the globality that's why I encourage people to study abroad or to think globally, or if they don't have the opportunity to study or work abroad, but at least to travel as far and as much as their budget allows, right? Because it gets us a different perspective, that what you and I are talking about is not the idea of not being unauthentic or to selling out or so on. It's not what we're saying. We're saying that there's a culture, just like countries around the world do businesses differently, and that there is a culture, a piece of that we hold true, and that if we're going to win and win in the long term, we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to be pragmatic around how we engage with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's very true, and it's a respect too, I believe, also, and just my traveling to Japan, doing business in China, and it is that level of respect and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Since DE&I is top of mind for all leaders, and no matter where they sit, it has to be. And when you were kind enough to speak at our DE&I panel at our Women's Leadership Forum in April. Thank you again, Guylaine, for that. We really appreciated you being there. You had, and I wrote down another great statement of you. You had said, I believe, we need to create a culture of relevance. Once there is awareness, there is change. Yet within the accounting profession, we know that Blacks and the Black population and minorities are underrepresented. What are your thoughts on why that is? And what can we do to change that? I know we're going to work together on that, but just your thoughts, because you had some really great comments and remarks during the panel discussion.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. That's what allyship looks like, because you know what, you've got a platform and you invited me on it. So I'm deeply grateful. Denise, here's a couple of things, right? I quote Maya Angelou until I'm blue in the face because I think she was brilliant. But
Agreed.
I'm gonna anchor my comments in this principle that she's given us, right? When she says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
The best
right?
quote.
And yet, what we learn in business school and so on in a white patriarchal supremacist culture is that we learn, check your feelings at the door, right? That's really the narrative that we said. Check your feelings at the door. You're too emotional. Women are too emotional. Ooh, we freak people out because we're emotional. And yet that is the most important of what makes us human. So think about this for a moment. And you're talking about experiences for Black and brown people that we carry with us every day. I had a conversation with a group earlier today, Denise, where I said to them, please be incredibly aware that there is a lot going on for Black people right now in the wake of the Buffalo massacre. It's not just the news. It's real for us. It's the fear now that we've been hearing it in the news. We've been hearing people talk about the great replacement theory. We've been here, and everybody wants to say, oh yeah, that's not, but it's real for us. And now it is being put on display. I don't know how to disengage from that if I can talk about that with you. Right? Mm-hmm. And yet you see, even in this moment that I'm sharing with you, your eyes have squinted, you got a little bit more still, because now you've got an awareness of something that you didn't think about before. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you're not equally shocked, baffled, heartbroken, and so on about it. There's a new element of awareness, though, that in this moment that I'm sharing with you through the lens of a camera, that I know I can see it in every ounce of you, that you're like, I never even thought about that. I can't chase that awareness for you. Mm-hmm. Because now you are aware. And you know what? From that awareness, there's a new level of empathy that will emerge out of you in words, thoughts, action, all of it, that it doesn't matter how many times I train you or say things, you'd have missed it. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. This is just not something that you connect with every day. And so I think we've got to create spaces and places where we can have the kind of conversations that you and I've had and the kind of conversation we're having now to create a heightened level of awareness in the things we say, in how we say them, how we interpret them, how we analyze them, and how they show up in our actions that says that this is not working. We need to do something else.
Oh, I think that's so powerful. I really do. The conversations, because you're absolutely right. You don't get that unless you have that one-on-one conversation and you hear it and you go to the feelings. You don't. And that's honestly what the last couple of years in the association I was at, what we worked on was we have to have the conversations first to understand where everyone's coming from. So
That's
important.
Fierce Conversation with Susan Scott, right? What does she say? The first sentence in the book, in the first page of her book, she says the relationship is the conversation. The
Yes.
relationship is the conversation. And so for that, I'm so grateful for this relationship and for this conversation that we continue to have.
Yeah, and I look forward to more conversation for sure. And I think it sounds like you would encourage everyone to start having more of these conversations, having the understanding and going deep within themselves to really find that understanding.
We have to have conversations, and we have to have conversations, fierce conversations. We got to have fierce conversations in this country. That means that people have to be okay with challenging beliefs that they've held. That means that people have to be okay with hearing something different than they've heard before. Mm-hmm. In the word of Sheryl Sandberg, we got to be okay with leaning into the yuck. We can't continue to try to justify what is. And I think, I told a board member today, and she says, you always come up with these things. I said, we light candles one at a time. I have never seen candles being lit all at the same time, even on a birthday cake. And so I think we light up the world one candle at a time, one conversation at a time, but meaningful, real, honest, respectful, loving conversations that are deeply rooted in the way you and I started, in gratitude. And this is what I tell people, that I was devastated when we lost Desmond Tutu, and the concept of Ubuntu. I am because you are. I can only be human to the extent that you are.
That's beautiful, Guylaine. If you do start with the heart, the conversation always will be positive.
It may not be positive, but it'll be real. It would be substantial. We would be able to say some hard truths, but you know what? The hard truth at the spirit of healing, at the spirit of moving us forward, at the spirit of saying, we got a problem, folks, right? We got a problem. And and the problem didn't create itself.
No, it's true. we all had a hand in itself. Yes.
And if we continue to do, this is the classic definition of insanity, right? If we continue to do what we've always done, we'll continue to get what we've always gotten. So if we want something different, let us then first by admitting, we don't really like what we have right now. let's just not try to say we're going to do change and so on. We got to start by saying, the way we have things right now, probably not ideal.
Exactly. You have to know where you're at to know where you want to go. Right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then we start to say, okay, here's where we are. Here's where we want to go. And you know what? What are the things that we've done before that we know work? And what are the things that we've got to do different? You and I are both fans of education, right? Yes. You and I have said education is where it's at, right? We got to talk about education.
Yes. That's at the heart, really, of everything and where it all starts.
Everything starts. Yep.
Exactly.
And Denise, let's just admit that lately in our country, we've heard a lot of narrative about jobs, which is why, at NABA for our foundation, we decided to say that it's about earnings. It's earnings and it's earning potential, right? What creates wealth is earnings, education, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. I don't know any other way to create wealth.
That's key. It's key. The
Correct.
Entrepreneurship is a big one. And that's partly what the accounting profession and the CPAs, what that can provide. To
Absolutely.
others. Absolutely. That's the gateway.
That's the gateway. This entrepreneurship, the opportunity to have, to own and operate a professional services firm. That's why we merge DOF and NABA, right? DOF is diverse organizations of firm, which are the Black firms. And, DOF, we talked about that, right? But more for your listeners. But that's why it was so intentional for us, because we want to see more Black and brown people buying, the transfer of those businesses happening to Black and brown people. We want to see that is a place that I think we can also have impact. And then the concept of enterprise is the idea that we've got to have diverse, more and more Black and brown people at the C-suite.
Yeah, that's definitely where there's a gap, significant gap, because we know that minorities, Black and brown, they get into the profession, not as much as others, and then they have a hard time staying in the profession because there isn't some of the awareness and the opportunities that there are. So there's a real big gap in the C-suite.
There is a huge gap in the C-suite, right? I mean, you look at partners, Black partners if you took the top 50 firms, it's 1%, 1%, right? And so when we want to talk about it, we can't only talk about the pipeline, because that's part of the gap. If I'm a young person and I think I want to go into this field, but I look up and I don't see anybody that looks like me, I go, yeah, no, I'll go find something else to do. Right. And so these challenges, like you said, they're boulders. We have to talk about all of it. And at the same time, Denise, I know that we have this in common too. We're not trying to say that we should dilute. We're not trying to lower the standard. We're saying we need to bring more people up to the standard.
Yes.
Right. And so we got to talk about this. What does that look like? It's all of it, because I don't know that if we solve one piece and we don't solve the others, right? But that's why we were so focused on education, earnings, entrepreneurship, and enterprise as part of the work of our foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have our work cut out for us, don't we, Guylaine? But we're ready for it.
We are, you know what? I love when we can say fired up, ready to go, right?
I love that too. Fired up and ready to go.
We are fired up and ready to go. And I know that with incredible leaders such as yourself and organizations like the one you're leading, I think our aspirations, Denise, would be, what could we do over the next 5 to 10 years? Mm-hmm. Because part of it too is we know we're not going to be in this for 20 years, Joe and I.
Right.
What can we do for the next 5 to 10 years? And then how do we ensure that those that come after us are inspired to take the baton and continue to move forward? This is a multi-year, multi-generation process. We got to give it the time that it needs so that we can do it well. And I'll share this thought with you. I had somebody that I spoke to last year, and she left me with that thought. I used to say to her, I stand on the shoulders of giant, and let me be the small, the peanut on whose shoulders other generation aim to stand on. And she said, I know what I want to be. I want to be a good ancestor.
I like that.
And ever since then, I've been using that. I think you and I, we want to be good ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely inspiring the
next good ancestors.
Yes, love that. That's a good way to end, Guylaine. So much profound perspectives and thoughts you shared with us today. I really appreciate just you being here, taking the time. But I do really appreciate the spoiler alert and congratulations on that, and your also your partnership with DOF and just all the great initiatives that you have moving forward. And I look forward to working with you going forward to move this profession ahead that we love, and to move the communities ahead, the business community, because as you said, that's critical to where we need to be.
So I share my gratitude with you, and I would say to you, give credit to the space we created. There is energy when you create space. And I think that's the power of it. Thank you for sharing your mic. Thank you for sharing your platform. Thank you for creating a space where we could have this conversation. And I am encouraged and hopeful and just so deeply grateful for what we're going to do together.
I am as well. Thank you again, Guylaine.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.